Right, ladies and gentlemen, we've all heard recently in the news about Nigel Farage having his bank account cancelled. Sure you all heard about that? I think it was with a bank called Coutts. And Coutts cancelled the bank account of Nigel Farage. Now, we have seen increasingly in our society the weaponization by progressives of liberal freedoms. The classical liberal used to have the attitude, ladies and gentlemen, you go your way and I go mine, and so long as you don't hurt anyone, you do your thing and I do my thing. But in that space there is freedom to act in a way that inconveniences and can hurt others. Along comes the progressive liberal in the last 10 years or so, and they have weaponized that freedom. And they have given us that adage that we now know as cancel culture. The idea that if you don't subscribe to the dogmas and the doctrines of the progressive liberal, you are guilty of a thought crime. If you don't go along with trans ideology, you're guilty of a thought crime. If you don't celebrate gay marriage, you're guilty of a thought crime. If you don't celebrate abortion, you're guilty of a thought crime. And these progressives are using the power and the influence and authority that they have over institutions like banks to cancel people's jobs, cancel people's bank accounts, cancel people's means of income. Why are they doing this? They are doing this as a means, ladies and gentlemen, of coercion. They are trying to coerce all of us into submitting to and believing in their dogmas and their ideology. I'll give you an example. Now, when this was happening to other people, Nigel Farage never made a hoo-ha about it. But when it happened to him, Nigel Farage pushed it to the top of the news agenda using his position in GB News. However, as Christians, I want to point out to you that this kind of behaviour is happening to Christians as well. I'll read to you the case of Reverend Richard Fothergill, who said that when he complained to the Yorkshire Building Society that it was promoting trans ideology during Pride Month, that he received a written response 4 days later from the Yorkshire Banking Society stating that his internet savings account was to be closed after being with them for 17 years. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the truth of the story is that they asked their customers for feedback, and so the Reverend was replying to their request for feedback about their activities. And when he did, the letter stated that the Yorkshire Building Society had a zero-tolerance approach to discrimination and that his feedback was not tolerable. In other words, they set the man up. They asked him to give his opinion, and when he did, they punished him and they took away his bank account. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to read to you, I want to point out to you that the reason why many conservatives have failed to push back against this ideology of progressive militancy is because the Conservative Party is not a Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is a Thatcherite party in which all it cares about is the freedom of the market. It doesn't have any moral underpinnings. It has no ambition to create a right-wing culture. It has no ambition to create an alternative to the progressive demagogues who all tell you that you cannot think for yourselves and you must agree with the dogmas of the Enlightenment. Ladies and gentlemen, brother, if you want to help, I'd appreciate one of you pulling up Acts 2:24. Sorry, Acts chapter 2, verse 44 in the Bible, and give me.
My phone's out of battery.
Okay, I'll find it in the Bible. Here, I'll give you my Bible.
I can't charge my do
The failure of the right is that it is not pinned to anything more than an economic ideology. The right wing of politics across the Western world is failing to push back against progressives because it has no culture, no values, no belief systems outside of free market economics. Without Christianity, European culture is dying. Without Christianity, your civil liberties are dying. Your freedoms are being taken from you one by one, bit by bit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in Acts chapter 2, verse 44, it teaches this. It says, "And all those who had believed were together and had all things in common. And they began selling their property and possessions and were sharing them with all, as anyone might have need. Day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, they were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved." We Christians have a response to the cancel culture of the liberal progressives, something the conservatives do not give you because they cannot give it to you. It's called solidarity with your brothers and sisters in the faith. Ladies and gentlemen, there are Christian banks that you can go to. There are Christian banks that you can take your money to, and you can deposit your money in those Christian banks that fund Christian causes. NatWest, that also tried to cancel Nigel Farage, and the Coutts Bank have been captured, like many institutions in Western society, by progressives. Those progressives have captured those institutions. The response of the church should be using our existing institutions to give the freedom to the people that the progressives are taking away. Did you know that the Salvation Army has a bank, an international bank? Imagine the Salvation Army opening up a street bank that you could put your money in and you could put your money into. Think about Kingdom Bank, a Christian bank. And so when we Christians use our institutions to outmaneuver the progressives, we draw people to the church because we give them the freedom that the progressives are trying to take away. And so, Christians, in conclusion, I want to remind you that we are in a culture war right now. A culture war against the progressives. A culture war against the liberals. A culture war against the Islamists. Too many of us do not think strategically. We think that our only duty is to preach the gospel. But if we are smart, and intelligent and use our institutions that already exist to compete with the institutions that have been captured by the progressives, we can become the bastion of freedom in the West, and we can draw people to ourselves, just like when in Acts chapter 2 verses 44 to the end, the Christians created the very first welfare system of the Roman Empire that was the very secret of its success in converting the Roman Empire. Learn from your history, Christians. Use your institutions to do battle against those who make war against the church. Think smart, box smart, think outside the box that the progressives want you to move in. Any questions?
Why do Muslims vote Labour?
Sorry?
Why do Muslims always vote Labour?
Okay, are there any questions on the topic?
What other influences did Christianity have in our society?
Sorry?
What other influences did Christianity have?
So, ladies and gentlemen, and I invite you to move in a bit closer so those that are at the back can hear what I'm saying. And it also allows people to walk behind you. Christians are not as weak as we have been led to believe. Our fellowships and our church buildings are across the entire Western world. We have charities that people depend on. Christians are disproportionately represented in the NHS. Imagine if the Christians of the NHS were to form a workers' union that said that if you try to force Christians to agree with abortion or contraception, all the Christians in the NHS are going to go on strike. That would be massively disruptive to the NHS. The problem with Christians is not that we don't have strength. The problem with Christians is that we don't use the strength that we have. And we don't use the strength that we have because we believe a lie of the Enlightenment. And the lie of the Enlightenment says that your religion is something private. It should not influence public politics. But there's nothing in the Bible that teaches that. That is a lie of liberals. It is not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that God owns the earth and everything in it. And that means, brothers and sisters, that politics belongs to God. And we should use politics and economics and institutions and the law and the courts to shepherd people in the direction of Christ. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen, on the topic? Questions going once? Questions going twice? Go on.
Just wondering, you mentioned earlier about how, let's say, the worst, unfortunately, the Christians have done, but how have they made up for it? And I'll give an example.
We're talking about this topic.
Oh, sorry.
Talking about this topic. I'll take general questions. Okay, if no one has, have you got a question on the topic?
What do you think about the Pope saying that homosexuality is not a crime and should be made legal worldwide, but admitting it is still a sin? What do you think of that?
That's not a question on this topic, Rob. Ladies and gentlemen, Christians especially, politics operates in three ways: power, authority, and influence. We Christians should not be ashamed to use power, authority, and influence to do battle with the liberals, because the liberals are using power, influence, and authority to do battle with the church. They are trying to convert us as Christians to liberalism. Christians must use the same institutions of law and government and economy to move people towards Christ.